I am 83 years old. I have buried a husband, raised 4 children, and survived things that would break most people in half. But the loneliest I have ever been in my entire life was sitting in my own kitchen on a Sunday afternoon, watching my phone not ring. Not because no one loved me, but because I had made it so easy for them to forget me. I cooked for 3 days straight, set the table for 8, and when Thanksgiving came, only 2 chairs were filled. Mine and my sister's. My son sent a turkey emoji. My daughter called at noon to say traffic was bad. I want to tell you something that took me far too long to learn. The more you call, the more you show up, the more you give, without being asked, the more invisible you become. Not because your children are bad people, not because they stopped loving you, but because you quietly, unintentionally, taught them that they didn't need to try. I was the one who always reached first, always forgave the missed dinners, always sent the cards, made the food, drove the distance. I told myself I was being understanding, easy to love, the kind of mother who never made her children feel guilty. But what I was actually doing was making myself forgettable. When you are always available, always calling, always the one holding the thread, people stop wondering about you. They stop checking. They stop feeling that small pull of guilt that might otherwise prompt them to pick up the phone. Why would they feel it? You already called. You already forgave. You already made everything easy. You answered questions they hadn't even thought to ask yet. I became background noise, not because my children were cruel, but because I had trained them to expect me to always be there, always reaching, always waiting. And when someone is always waiting, you stop worrying about making them wait. I remember sitting alone at my kitchen table one afternoon and realizing I could not recall the last time any of my children called simply because they were thinking of me. Not to cancel, not to ask something, not out of guilt after too long a silence, just because my face crossed their mind and they wanted to hear my voice. I could not remember, and the reason was something I had done myself without ever realizing it. I had never once gone quiet long enough for them to feel my absence. I had filled every silence, closed every distance, answered every gap with more effort, more love, more giving. I thought I was being devoted. What I was actually doing was disappearing. You cannot be missed by someone who never wonders where you went. And if that is sitting heavy in your chest right now, good. It should. It sat heavy in mine too, and it changed everything. Subscribe to my channel, Wisdom of Age, because what I am about to share next is the part that finally turned things around. Now here is the part that people find hardest to hear, and I understand why. It sounds cold at first. It sounds like something a bitter person does, not a loving mother. I stopped calling, not in anger, not to teach anyone a lesson, not because I sat down one evening and decided to run some kind of experiment on my own children. I stopped because I was exhausted, because I had spent years pouring effort into a silence that echoed back nothing, because continuing to reach across that distance, knowing it was only ever me doing the reaching, had started to feel less like love and more like begging. And I was too old and too tired to keep begging for something that should have come freely. So I let the phone sit quiet. I let Sunday pass without calling. I let birthdays get a simple card instead of a phone call followed by a follow-up call to make sure they received the first one. I stopped being the thread that held everything loosely together. I let go, and I waited to see what was actually there without me holding it. I want to be honest with you about those first few weeks. They were hard. The silence was not peaceful. It was heavy. It sat in the room with me like something uninvited. I watched my phone the way you watch a door you are not sure anyone is going to walk through. Some evenings I almost broke. almost picked it up and dialed just to feel less alone, even if the voice on the other end was distracted, even if the conversation lasted 4 minutes and ended with someone saying they had to go. But I didn't call. I held still. And what I discovered in that stillness was something I had not expected at all. I discovered that going quiet was not cruelty. It was the first truly honest thing I had done in years, because all those calls, all that effort, all that relentless reaching, that had not been connection, that had been performance. I had been performing the role of a mother who needed nothing, wanted nothing, and would always be there, regardless of how little came back. Stopping was not giving up on them. It was finally being honest about what was real. And the truth, once you stop running from it, has a way of clearing the air. Here is key point 6 expanded into a 400-word segment. And this is the part I want you to sit with, really sit with. Because everything I have shared with you, the missed dinners, the unanswered calls, the lasagna I drove an hour to deliver, and the porch I stood on for 90 seconds, it all leads here. You cannot be worth visiting while you are busy begging to be visited. I know how that sounds. I know it might sting a little. It stung me too when I finally let myself see it clearly. But I want you to think about the version of yourself that calls 3 times before getting an answer. That sends the invitation and then sends a follow-up to make sure they received the invitation. That makes the food, sets the table, puts out the good napkins, and then sits alone waiting, listening for a car in the driveway that never comes. Think about that woman. Think about how she carries herself. Think about the energy she brings into a room, the quiet desperation underneath all that giving, all that effort, all that endless accommodating. Now ask yourself honestly, is that someone you would go out of your way to spend an afternoon with? Not because she is not lovable. She is deeply lovable, but because there is something suffocating about need that never speaks its own name. Something that makes people take a small step back without even knowing why. We sense it in others before we can explain it. That feeling of being responsible for someone's happiness, of every visit carrying invisible weight, of never quite being able to relax because somewhere underneath the meal and the conversation, there is a quiet desperation that no amount of your presence ever fully fills. I was that woman. For years, I was her. And the moment I stopped being her, the moment I stopped shrinking myself into whatever small space my children had left over, stopped performing contentment I did not feel, stopped making my need invisible while letting it run everything, something shifted. Not just in how they saw me, in how I saw myself. I stopped asking for a seat at the table and remembered that I had built the table. You were never meant to earn your place in the lives of people you raised. You were never meant to audition for their time. Walk back into your own life like you belong there, because you do, and when they finally do come back, it brings with it a quiet test, one that many parents fail without even realizing it. Because after all the waiting, all the silence, all the moments you felt overlooked, there is a natural urge to release it, to remind them how long it's been, to let them feel, even for a moment, the weight of your absence. The words sit right there on your tongue. Now you remember me? Or you had time today? It feels justified. It feels earned, but it doesn't bring them closer. You see, when your children return, they are not just walking through your door. They are stepping into a space that either feels safe or heavy. And if the first thing they meet is guilt, disappointment, or quiet punishment, something inside them tightens. They may stay for a while, they may smile, they may even apologize, but a part of them will begin to associate coming back with emotional discomfort. And people, no matter how much they love you, tend to avoid what makes them feel that way. What they need in that moment is not a reminder of their absence, but a feeling that their presence still matters, that they are welcome without conditions, that coming back does not require them to pay for the past. This does not mean you ignore your feelings. It means you choose the right moment for them. There is a difference between expressing your heart and punishing someone with it. When they sit with you, talk to them as if this moment is enough. Offer warmth, not weight. Let your home feel like a place they want to return to, not a place they must emotionally prepare for. Because the truth is simple. If every visit becomes a confrontation, visits will become rare. But if every visit feels like peace, they will begin to seek it more often. Connection is not rebuilt through guilt. It is rebuilt through safety, consistency, and quiet dignity. So when they come back, don't make them regret it. Make them remember why they should never stay away so long again. There was a time when my days quietly revolved around waiting for a call, a message, a visit that might or might not come. I didn't notice it at first, how my own life had slowly become smaller, shaped around the hope of someone else's attention. And the more space I left for that waiting, the more empty everything else began to feel. But here's what I came to understand. Children don't return to emptiness. They don't feel drawn to a life that looks paused, as if it's been placed on hold just for them. Not because they are unkind, but because it creates a silent pressure. It tells them without words, you are responsible for filling this space, and that kind of responsibility can feel heavy. So I made a quiet decision. I stopped structuring my days around who might call and started asking myself, what still brings me to life? I began with small things, a walk in the morning, even if it was just down the street, sitting with an old hobby I had long forgotten, reaching out to a friend instead of waiting for family. At first it felt unfamiliar, even uncomfortable, but slowly something shifted. My time started to feel like mine again, and with that shift, something else changed too, how I appeared to others. I was no longer someone waiting to be remembered. I became someone engaged, present, and quietly fulfilled. And there's a different kind of energy in that. It's not loud, it doesn't demand attention, but it draws people in. Because when your life has its own rhythm, your presence feels lighter. There is no unspoken expectation hanging in the air, no silent question of, why didn't you come sooner? Just a sense of calm that makes others feel at ease. Children notice this more than we think. They may not say it, but they feel the difference between obligation and invitation. And when your life is not centered around their absence, your presence becomes something they choose, not something they feel they owe. That's when visits begin to happen differently. Not out of guilt, but out of genuine desire to be part of something that feels whole. So I stopped waiting for life to come to me and quietly started living it again. One thing I've learned at my age, and honey, 83 years teaches you a thing or two, is that you cannot drag love through a door. You cannot beg it, guilt it, or cry it into showing up, but you can invite it. And there is a difference, a world of difference, between begging someone to come and giving them a reason to want to come. So here is what I did. I stopped asking. I stopped saying, when are you coming? And you never visit. And I sit here alone. Those words, as true as they were building a wall every time I spoke them. Nobody rushes toward guilt. Nobody drives 2 hours toward obligation. I had to change my approach, and I want you to hear this because it changed everything for me. I picked a Saturday, just one Saturday, and I sent word, through my granddaughter, bless her heart, that I would be cooking that weekend. Not a formal invitation, not a big announcement, just a simple, warm message that said, "Tell your mama and your uncles that I'm making the pot roast on Saturday, the one with the potatoes." That was it. "No, you never come see me. No, I don't know how much time I have left." Just the pot roast on Saturday. And I want you to understand something. That pot roast is not just food. It never was. That recipe carries 30 years of Sunday afternoons in it. It carries the smell of a home they grew up in, the sound of a kitchen that was always warm, the feeling of being small and safe and loved without condition. When I mentioned that dish, I wasn't just talking about dinner. I was calling something up from inside of them. A memory so deep they didn't even know it was sitting there until it woke up and made their chest ache in the sweetest way. 3 of my children came that Saturday. 3. And they didn't come because I shamed them. They came because something in them remembered. They walked through that door, and before they even sat down, I could see it in their faces. They were children again, just for a moment, and I held that. I held it quietly, and I fed them, and I laughed with them, and I did not say one word about the months that had passed. Not one word. Because here is what I know now. When you create joy, people return to it. When you become a place of warmth instead of a place of pain, they find their way back. You don't have to demand their presence. You have to remind them of what your presence feels like. Remind them of the table. Remind them of the smell. Remind them that home is not just a place. It is a feeling, and that feeling has your name on it. Give them a reason to come that feels like love, not like duty. And watch how quickly they remember the way home. And let me tell you something else, something I wish somebody had whispered in my ear years ago, before I spent so many evenings sitting by that phone, waiting for it to ring. I had to learn, slowly, painfully, beautifully, that I could not pour all of myself into one basket. And for too long, that basket was my children. Every hope, every morning, every quiet afternoon, all of it aimed at people who had their own lives running full speed ahead of them. So I walked out my front door. That's what I did. I found my community, the ladies at the church hall, the little garden group that meets on Thursday mornings, the neighbors I had smiled at for years but never truly sat with. I stepped into their world, and something remarkable happened. My days filled up. My hands stayed busy. My heart had somewhere to pour itself that poured right back. And I want to be honest with you. There were weeks when my children called me and I missed it. Me, the woman who used to watch that phone like it owed her something. But I was out. I was laughing somewhere. I was needed somewhere. I was living, not waiting. Because when you are busy blooming, you stop counting who is not watering you. I will tell you something I wish someone had told me 30 years ago. You are not a burden for wanting to be loved well. You are not difficult for needing more than a text message and a turkey emoji on Thanksgiving. You are a human being who raised humans and loved them before they had a single memory to show for it. Stop making yourself smaller to fit inside the corners of their busy lives. Take up your full space. Live your whole life. Build your days around joy that belongs to you, not around a phone that may or may not ring. Because here is what I know now, at 83, with everything I have seen and lost and found again. The people who truly love you will always notice when you go quiet, and the ones who come looking, those are your people. Hold them, and let the rest love you from wherever they are. That is enough. You are enough. You always were.